Hello and welcome to the IBM WPS and ILOG JRules integration video. In the next 10 minutes, we will use a claims processing example to show the benefits to business process improvement when combining IBM BPM with VRMS. Let's start by looking over the business rules in ILOG Rule Studio. Here is an example of a rule that checks the number of accidents of a driver being more than 2 and makes that driver ineligible, as well as adding a message to the response. Now, a decision table, or a set of 8 similar rules where we restrict females to at least 16 years old with a manual assessment for those between 16 and 21 in California, and other states made directly eligible, with males must be at least 18 years old with the same manual assessment in California, and all others made directly eligible. Now, without leaving the same Eclipse-based environment, we switch from the rule perspective, brought to you by ILOG JRules, to the business integration perspective, brought to you by WebSphere Integration Developer, or WID. Now, let's create an SCA component from a rule app created in ILOG. This is a very useful integration brought to you by collaboration between the IBM and ILOG development teams. First, we select the SCA component from Rule App Wizard. Then, a WID module for the SCA component. And of course, the rule app created in ILOG JRules. We are then presented with the rule sets in that rule app exposed as decision services. Selecting eligibility, we see the relevant inputs and outputs. Next, we add a schema to resolve model dependencies, choose a package, and name for the decision service. If we wish to add execution trace events using the CEI, we check that box at the bottom. And finally, choose the invocation method from the dropdown. This automatically generates a new interface, as well as the complete Java implementation and all resources necessary to automate a call to the ILOG JRules-based eligibility decision service, which is now wired in my assembly diagram. Now, let's look at the quote process. Here, the process checks the eligibility in an invoke at the top. This invoke makes use of the interface just created by the SCA component wizard. Below, we see the interface mentioned and the operation set to eligibility. After the service responds, the process uses a choice to route flow between the yes, manual, and otherwise branches. Let's go ahead and test the process in WID with some sample data. First, with Cindy. Cindy is a 35-year-old living in California with no accidents on her record. Clicking on the Invoke button will walk us through the process execution running on WPS and JRules in the background. First, the process is invoked. Then, the getQuote operation calls the ILOG JRules eligibility decision service, using the same interface from before. This returns a result, which the process checks in the choice, and in Cindy's case, displays a confirmation, since she is automatically approved. In the server logs, we will see directly the approval message. Let's try with a few more people. Next, Chris. Chris is a 19-year-old male living in California. This time he will pass the age limit, but be referred to the manual branch for additional review. Finally, Rachel. Rachel is a 17-year-old female living in Washington instead of California. As such, she will be automatically approved, and we see the message in the logs. Now, let's assume the business wants to make changes to these rules, but no change to the process is necessary. This is made possible by logging into ILOG Rule Team Server, a web-based rule interface for the business users, where we can edit the eligibility rules seen earlier inside of WID. Selecting the eligibility project, let's look at the same decision table as before. The business user can edit this table and make some changes to the logic. First, Washington State now requires a manual review similar to California. Therefore, we add a new row to the table and set the value to Washington. Also, the eligibility set to manual, and we copy and paste the reason code changing the state to Washington. Business user also needs to change the age restrictions for males from 18 to 16. As soon as we make the first change, Rule Team Server immediately reports a gap in yellow. Once the second row is also updated, the warning is resolved. We also update the reason codes at the right. Before we save this new rule version, the business user adds comments to explain what modifications were made to the rule. With this, the rules are complete, and we can deploy them directly from Rule Team Server, as we will do today, or move them back to Rule Studio for deployment. Note that this is a rule deployment and no code or process changes have occurred. All rule deployments also retain rule versions for simple auditing and rollback. Now our new eligibility service version is ready. Back in WID, let's test the process again with some of the same data as before. First, Sam. Sam is a 16-year-old male in California. Based on the new rules, he is no longer rejected with the 16-year-old age limit, but sent to the manual review branch of the process. The server logs show this change, along with the updated reason code from the decision table we modified in Rule Team Server. Finally, Rachel, our 17-year-old female from Washington State. Earlier, she was automatically approved. However, now that Washington State requires a manual review process, we see the new reason code in the server logs. Today, we saw how to change business rules without modifying code using IBM WebSphere Process Server and IBM WebSphere ILOG JRules. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.